Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We have Heath Grimm of Upper Iowa. And Heath, this is cool because you are in such a unique lane. Iowa is a state known for wrestling and great D3 presence, great NAIA presence. You have Wartburg, you have Grandview, of course, Iowa, Iowa State, Northern Iowa, and then JUCO presence. You are the only D2 program in the state of Iowa with Upper Iowa. What kind of lane is that for you? Is that special for you to have that distinction as the only Division II program in the state?
For sure, without a doubt. It was part of the vision and the impetus on why we went Division II. We had an athletic director with former Division II experience back in the day. It was about 2004. He came in, Gil Cloud. And Gil's idea was, let's try to be unique, set ourselves apart from some other institutions. And he pitched the idea to the board on going D2. They wanted to recruit some higher end student athletes to Fayette and the other programs, and it's worked out. And I've loved the challenge. It was a little bit of a transition, but I love the challenge.
Go back to that transition. So you were Division III for a while, having success there. You were competitive at that level, and then made the transition. When you go from D3 to D2, what's the biggest difference?
Depth of quality. That's not a slight on any of these programs you already mentioned. We were one of those. But what you get in D2 is you just get more Upper Iowas, more the Wartburgs, more the Grandviews. There's just not one or two or three or four of them. There's 20 of them.
And then when you have 20 of them and you have scholarships, does that change who you're able to get in your program?
It does, for sure. It's a big tool, right? There's a lot of people out there that dollars matter. It helps us fill, I'd say, the departing seniors or juniors or your starters. It kind of helps you target the weights of need a little bit easier. But like you said, we were really competing at a high level in D3, took second in 2002, crowned a national champ in 2003, had a really good team. I thought we could run for the title in 2004. So we were getting some high-end kids, but we're just getting more of them now. I just feel like we're consistently always going to be, a tough out. We're going to have always a really good team from 25 through heavyweight.
When you're going into a living room, especially as we think about the state of Iowa, you do have the D1 programs, and then you do have those powerhouses at different levels. How do you separate yourselves from some of those other programs that we've talked about?
Well, number one, I've been coaching a long time, and some of my ideals and philosophies have evolved. And there's no way that I would ever disrespect these other programs. Number one, there's a lot of great coaches out there. At all different levels. So I'm no way ever trying to pigeonhole a program or say this or that. I'm just selling what we've done. 20 years I've been here. That's really how I'm trying to differentiate myself from a lot of other programs, is that I've been here for quite a while. Here's our proven track record. Look at the roster, look at our results. Let those speak volumes for ourselves, as opposed to some hope or some program goal, even though there's things we still want to accomplish. But being in Northeast Iowa, we get a lot of kids that like to hunt and fish. We like, kids that like to be outdoors. Upper Iowa's the only school in the state that has 2 classes at a time. That's a very unique academic approach. You're talking about a full 16-week semester broken down into 2 8-week terms, taking 2 to 3 classes per term. It's a pretty nice approach where they can really focus on both academics and athletics.
One of the approaches, all you have to do is look at your NCAA champions, your All-Americans, your roster, and it's a really diverse roster. You have Northeast Iowa kids, homegrown. You have New York. You have Florida. Even if you go back to the D3 days, you have someone from Cuba. How have you been able to have such a diverse mix of people come into your program?
Well, probably our academic profile, we bring in a lot of education majors. So we're getting a lot of these kids out there teaching and coaching all across the country. Obviously, we got quite a few now in Iowa, north of 20 and east of 35. and really that's our territory, and we branch out from there. But it's really connections. 20 years of being in the game. I coached down south. I recruited Florida when I was at Campbell. When I was at Syracuse, obviously I recruited the New York kids, and I also was in charge of the junior college scene. And that's really when, I crossed paths with Sam Barber, who was the interim coach at the time, and me, him, and Mark Schwab. Schwab was at the Gophers then. We all hung out together at RCTC, and Sam told me about the Upper Iowa job opening up, and that's when I looked into it back in 2000 and haven't looked back since.
When you think about Fayette and you think about Iowa, of course, one of the states that's the competition is Oklahoma. Your most recent NCAA champion was Josh Walker. He was a 4-time finalist from Oklahoma, transferred in. How did you get him?
Go back to Syracuse University. I recruited an All-American out of Labette Community College named Ike Wenahan. Ike is a wrestling junkie, enthusiast. He's out of the coaching game and wrestling game, but him and I remain good friends. And we were looking to replace somebody, trying to find somebody. Ike knew that Josh was out there, was thinking his career was coming to an end. And I was able to reach out to Renfro, the coach at NEO, who coached Josh at Labette and Ike, and was able to get his number. And Josh and I hit it off, man. We clicked, and it was almost karma. It was supposed to happen. I loved everything Josh brought to the program, and he was just what we needed.
Having been to numerous dual meets in Upper Iowa and going to Fayette, it's a special atmosphere, and you can ask other coaches too that it's hostile. There's a lot of people there. You have great crowd support, fan support. How have you built that over the years that people care so much about your program?
Well, that's definitely part of the recruiting pitch, right? We want to win or sometimes lose, but we want to be supported with those kind of kids. So number one, it starts with a good kid. But then again, we got a lot of Northeast Iowa flavor, and those communities travel well. And we obviously, the KCRG, we got a couple good broadcasters that help get that out there. And I just think the dynamic, it's something to do. It's North Iowa. It's what you do. And I try to find the right day and time to do it, looking at the high school schedule. We do a lot of Sunday afternoons. I think that bodes well. But just the energy, our kids love wrestling at home, and that's a pretty easy recruiting tool as well when kids can watch us on KCRG, or we have some of these dual meets. We could reference that Mankato one a couple of years ago, and just I flipped that on the laptop and let the kid watch a little bit of that. And Justin Foley was actually at Ellsworth at the time, and he came over and visited, and he went to that dual meet, and he goes, "That was a no-brainer. That's why I'm here."
And just to set it up more with the program is that you do some things that are unique. You have potlucks before the dual meet. You have fan interaction. A lot of the times the basketball teams, football teams are going. Is that something you're actively doing, or is there someone else doing that for you?
We did a lot of it, but we got a lot of help from Brock Wismiller. And now we have Sarah Swanson that's in charge of facilities and some event planning. It's all hands on deck up here. Emily Prusner does a great job. But it obviously starts with our man, Rick Hartzell, our AD, former UNI AD, came highly endorsed by some great wrestling people down at the UNI realm. And, it starts with him and his support for the program. Our president's an avid wrestling fan. Our board of trustees has a wrestling flavor to it with at least, I think, 3 former wrestlers on it. So, it's the culture that we've created. Hey, 20 years, okay? 20 years of being here. I'm all in, and you want everyone else to be all in.
Of course, you referenced that Minnesota State Mankato duel. Of course, Jim Makovsky is the head wrestling coach there. I'm sure a lot of people want to know what your relationship is like with him, because you guys got pretty chippy on the sidelines there and off the sidelines. You like Jim?
Yeah, I like Jim. I'd say it's sometimes like a bad boyfriend-girlfriend immature relationship. you know what? That dual meet was heated. It was as heated as I've been part of or seen in all my time. And then it was less than 2 weeks later, we're at the regional tournament. Guys are warming up after weigh-ins, and Jim comes up to me, and here we are talking. I think all of our athletes from both Minnesota State and Upper Iowa are looking at us like, yeah, those guys, we don't know if they like each other or hate each other.
But it was pretty interesting because you guys bumped shoulders, and it wasn't just one time. It was a lot of times you guys were called to the bench. It just must get heated, huh?
It's our gym. It's our gym. And Minnesota State, we're not going to let those guys come in and try to dictate the flow and the tempo of it. It's heated when we go up there. Those fans are rude and loud, and they're all over us, and they try to get involved. I know every school that comes in and wrestles us, there's usually a surprised, reaction after like the first time or two. They're like, wow, man, this little place, man, you guys pack them in. This is fun. This is why they like to do it. I don't like to go to some gym where there's only 150 people watching us compete. I'd like to go up into the hornet's nest, and let's compete and have the best experience possible.
What do you want to achieve the next few years here? Upper Iowa's Division II. The only Division II championship in the state of Iowa was when Northern Iowa was Division II. Is it conceivable to think you can win a championship?
Yeah, it is. It is. You know what? We're just 2 years removed from being fourth in the country again. That's our third D2 trophy. This year we had a 2, 3, and 5 seed, and the 5 seed, beat the 4 seed pretty good. We gave the number 1 seed, two-time champ, a 7-5 match. I had a Fargo finalist, 2-time national qualifier, had a regional champ heavyweight. We felt like we could come home with another trophy. But to bring home that gold trophy, we need more than just those 4, 5, 6 guys. We got to have 8 there. And that's, 8 at minimum, right? You want to have 7, 8 guys there, and you need the 5, 6, 7 guys getting on the stand. You need to punch a few guys in the finals. It's possible. We are thinking at a higher level. That's one thing that I've been saying more and more. We got the talent. We got the structure. We got the coaches. We got the facility. We just need the kids to really think at a higher level. They've all know how to compete. They just need to do it on a consistent level and not take a backseat to anybody.
Thinking about where you're situated and trying to raise the level for fans and what you can do. You're from Osage. Doug Schwab is from Osage. He's the head wrestling coach at Northern Iowa. You have a great program down the road in Wartburg. You have a great program in Grandview. Why not get all 4 of those teams together and have a quadrangular?
Let's do it. Let's do it. We wanted to wrestle a team or two within that list that you just mentioned. We also got Malachek up at Lacrosse, another Green Devil. And Dave actually we're on the same wavelength. Dave came down here and we wrestled in New Hampton High School's gym 1 year. And then the following year we went to Osage and wrestled our 2 college teams together. Trent Gooddale is from Osage. He used to coach at Limestone. He's back in Osage now. Trent was always on board with trying to do something like that. Mark Schwab, when Mark was the head coach at Buena Vista, Mark and I actually had a plan to wrestle in Osage as well. Hey, I love it. We had an idea of maybe you and I in Wisconsin wrestle each other, and then us in Parkside, and then like a D3 lacrosse and whoever wrestle all in the same venue on 3 mats at the same time. That was an idea that was getting kicked around a couple of years ago, right before Bono took the job at Wisconsin. So, hey, I'm past worrying if you're going to win or lose. Okay. What I want to do is what's right, what's best, what's going to bring the most energy, because that's when you're going to get the best performance out of kids.
Maybe the best wrestler to wrestle in Division III was Jesus Wilson. He's from Cuba. He went to Upper Iowa, known for the match with Terry Brands in the 1993 World Championships. How did you get him to Fayette, Iowa to wrestle at Upper Iowa?
Well, he was already here. Okay. So Mccready and Barber, got to give those guys props for that. Jesus left Cuba after numerous, what do I say, numerous failed attempts to come through on promises from Castro and government down there. Jesus and the national team, when they came to Florida, they flew into Florida, they traveled in Florida. 6 of those guys defected. And so the team went on to wrestle these other duels, and those guys stayed down in Florida and branched out. Jesus got connected with the high school team down there that was involved with the J-Rob camp. He got involved as a counselor. Mccready had an arrangement with J-Rob to do the 10-day camp here. Sam, the coach at Air Force, was always involved with Jay and with the J-Rob camps. So they got him through that system. I know that there was D1. Jay wanted him D1, but he couldn't probably go through the clearinghouse, with just the whole transition and being NCAA compliant at that time for D1. D2, the same boat. D3 was really the only route for him to get exposure in the U.S. And so, yeah, he kind of played with guys a little bit there and won a D3 national title. I got here. He didn't want to wrestle anymore. He said, I want to be an Olympic champion, focus on freestyle. We put him on as an assistant coach, a part-time. After a year of me being here, he saw that we had something pretty special getting put together. He said, Coach, could I wrestle again? We went right to our compliance. He paid back all of his part-time coaching money, and he was cleared again by the NCAA, and he just, burned through the D3 scene again. And that was the same summer then that he wrestled Guerrero out in Indianapolis in the best of 3 to be the world team Olympic representative. So
talk to how good he was, though. Like, what was he doing to the competition? How good was he?
Well, he was a man amongst boys. He was so strong and weathered and experienced that it was just a matter, really, we asked him, he did whatever we asked him to do. If we said, hey, let's get 5 takedowns this first period, he'll go out and get 5 takedowns. If we say put him on his back, he could throw a guy, obviously. He had great hips. He was a good counter wrestler. And he had some tricks from top that he picked up. Obviously, a top-bottom game was quite a transition for him, freestyle to folk. He had a few hiccups early, but he started doing some things on top. Optional start, drop down to a heel and lace, stretch the guy's legs, step over and put him in a bow, and then take him over to his back. And that I saw kids basically crying and parents yelling, what are you doing? And he's taking his freestyle into the folk style world.
Mike Mccready is a guy that you've mentioned. He is a huge part of the program. He was the head wrestling coach. Died of a heart attack in 1999. How does he still influence the program?
Well, Upper Iowa historically, right, was really strong in the 60s and 70s. The 80s and 90s, it was lean, but Mike was here, and Mike was just a rock. He was more than just a wrestling coach. Some of the people that's still around the area, even there's a few on campus yet that shared a lot of time and conversations with him. He was a heck of a mentor, rock solid human being. And legacies like that just don't fly away when someone retires. He made an impact on a lot of lives, and I think Sam Barber is probably the best person to talk to attest to that imprint that he lays on people. I never got that from him. I just wasn't around him. I actually competed against Sam. Sam wrestled for Mac, and I used to wrestle Sam. So, I saw him in my competitive nature when I was 18 years old it was me against the world, So, but it didn't take long from being here to see the immediate respect that was for Mike. And we made Jim Miller came up when he passed away, and we did a ceremony and named the wrestling room, after him, and they bronzed a nice little plaque for him that we still have in our new wrestling facility in our office.
Who, when you think back to it in the coaching that you've had as head wrestling coach, who's the guy that worked the hardest and got the most out of his ability?
Oh, you're talking about athlete-wise?
Yeah.
Well, Carl Broghammer, Mitchell Schultz. Those are two guys. Logan Hopp. Those guys laid it on the line every time they put the shoes on. And I'm Travis Eggers. I mean, I'm starting, Tyler Mumbolo. These guys we're talking 3-time All-Americans, 4-time national qualifiers, guys that were like Carl was a 4-time academic All-American. Nick Baumler is a recent one. They just competed. They're ultra competitive guys. Carl got 3rd place in the country 3 times. He was out in Reno. We took him to the Reno Tournament Champions, and he was in the semifinals and lost to the Oklahoma State kid, and just a bloodbath. Carl's got some unbelievably good wins over some D1 guys throughout his career. Logan Hopp, same thing. Always got disrespected for being 5 foot, 8 at heavyweight, but could super duck you and ankle pick you. Had a 1-second escape. I remember being in Reno with him one time, and we were wrestling a kid from West Virginia, and the coaches kind of looked over at, oh, this is your guy that you got in the quarters, and they kind of smirked at us. Well, Logan goes out there and hits a fireman's carry. Fireman's carry, number one. Tips the guy over on his side and switches off to a headlock and pins him instantly in the first minute. And we walked up, and it's like, yep, I go, you better go shake those guys' hands and just let them know that we're here and we're here to compete. So Mitchell Schultz was just a 1-time placer for Postville, Iowa, 7th place, and he was a 3-time All-American here. He worked his tail off. Coach Ryan Phillips was a national champ for me. Ryan really took him under his wing, and he just bought in, and he worked his tail off.
When you wrestled at Luther, you wrestled Lincoln McElravy. How tough was he?
That was a weird story. I was thinking I had things figured out, and I'm like, who's this kid with a mullet, wearing a turtleneck shirt, holding a girl's hand to the mat? Like he was holding his girlfriend's hand. And I'm like, I don't like this guy, just competitively. I'd just beaten a pretty good guy. This was the finals, and went out there, and he hits this boot scoot and doesn't get around me, and I get both my hands behind his armpits, and I get the inside leg in, and I get 2 points out of it. And I get out of it because I was not comfortable, and he does it again to me. I get 2 more points. So I'm up like 6-5 going into the 3rd period, and all of a sudden I couldn't stand. I hit a wall. His hands, his pressure just was clubbing me. At one point, I thought I was a tough guy. He hit me so hard, we're out of bounds. I remember looking at our coaches in the corner, and I'm like, hey, he just hit me. And my coach just looked back, and he goes, well, they hit him back. And I remember walking to the center of the mat going, I can't. So that was not a comfortable feeling. I got smothered, and I think it ended up like 13-8. So needless to say, he had me to the brink. He was tough, man. I really learned to respect him, watching him years later throughout his career. That was actually I think I was his last unattached match as a true freshman, or when he got pulled, his red shirt got pulled. And I remember going home over winter break through the VHS and the VCR. My dad watched it. I went out and hung out with my buddies and came back, and my dad was like, wow, you're not in very good shape. I go, I think that guy's pretty good, Dad. We'll see.
And then he ended up winning nationals that year.
Yeah.
Yep. As we end this, what kind of things are you going to take out of this quarantine that you're going to use for the upcoming season?
Well, we just value the time that we have with our athletes, and you don't want to take it for granted. So every opportunity you get to be around your athletes, you want to try to make an impact. Not be preachy or anything like that. Just be real. Let them know you care. Let them know you love them. You want the best for them each and every time. We need to keep instilling into our guys to be intrinsically motivated, to find a way to work out, find a way to train, have a can-do attitude and a mindset. And we've become so specialized and so dependent on clubs and routines already established that I think some of the old school in me, might be a little more validated during these kind of times. Find a way, go out and pick up a piece of iron. If you work in a junkyard, or grab a rock if you work on the farm. Grab some buckets of feed. And do your shoulder shrugs. I mean, it all matters. Do stance and motion out in the yard. You can do that stuff, and that's really what I think some of us are taking away from it.